was going to be a big fire from the very beginning. It just had trouble written all over it. Normally when we see a range fire burn through the evening and show active fire behavior the next morning, that's a really bad sign. It's very unusual for that to happen, let alone happen again the second night, happen again the third night, happen again the fourth night.
One of the ranchers came up to me and told me, he said, Tom, he says, you could have had all of the engines in the world, heavy tankers in the world, and you wouldn't have been able to stop this one. It just went through everything faster than anything he'd ever seen before.
With the advent of this fire, due to displacement of various species, it's going to be a little more difficult this season and probably for seasons to come in locating those game.
And somebody this summer said, well, how's your grass out there this year? So I said, it's beautiful. And I said, it's about that tall and you can't hardly walk through it, it's so thick. And I said, it's just ready for a fire.
This fire kept going and going and going and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we ended out with, including the Scott Creek complex, 640-some thousand acres of fire. Actually, it was several fires that eventually burned together, broke out. Nevada, just to the south of us, was on fire. These lightning storms regionally, there were hundreds of lightning strikes. We were afraid that we might see this fire actually go all the way to the Snake River, cross the Snake River. We were worried about communities as far north as Glens Ferry and Bliss. Fire jumped the Bruno River Canyon, went back and forth across the Jarbidge River Canyon like it wasn't even there. West of the Bruno Canyon, there's a lot of wide open desert and country, so the fire with the right kind of wind could have gone that way, perhaps all the way to Boise.
It was a combination of probably all the elements that drive a fire. We have heavy fuels, as you can see. Probably the biggest driving factor was we had 30-year record low fuel moisture. We had extremely low relative humidity in single digits. Southwest winds that were 20 and 30 mile an hour sustained 24 hours a day for several days. So all those factors came together, and then when we had the start, it just all came together and produced a burning event that was very unusual for this region.
Fuels left over from last year. We had a heavy year as far as vegetation. We had a drought with roughly 50–55% of the snowpack normal. And then we had a July that was far and beyond the hottest July that we have on record. So we had almost a perfect storm lining up, you know, and then we end up with, what, 2,600 lightning strikes on the Idaho-Nevada border. We end up with multiple fire starts, multiple dispatches in all directions, even called in a load of jumpers. So there was just an incredible amount of resources deployed rapidly, but the crews did an outstanding job. We didn't lose anybody.
We had an opportunity to fly down to Duck Valley and meet with those folks down there this morning. Congratulate them on their combined and great efforts.
To how we operate our rangeland and how we respond. I think it's also important to really take a look at utilization levels, look at grazing practices that can be used during the fire. The more studies we brought in to help this pretty much outlaw consistently.
What the goal is to assign, they'll respond, give them the resources to respond.
And you could see the ravines had been burned out, and literally the earth had been scorched. And just to see that shows the amount of damage that was caused by the fire.
Well, it's absolute devastation. From 1984 till about 93, had part ownership in a big ranch out here, 150,000 acres, and rode that country almost every year. And that ranch, I flew over it this morning, and that ranch is devastated. It's gone and will never be the same in our lifetime. But we'll overcome this because we've got the spirit to do it, and we'll be the better off for it.
I've been here and seen quite a few fires, but there'd be maybe just one big fire somewhere, and we concentrated on putting it out. It wasn't like this one was. And in the middle of the day, I felt like that it was so hot during the day that the fire started itself. You know, you didn't have to have a spark or anything, because it would be maybe a quarter mile or a mile from the one that was burning. And that's why I think that it burnt this whole country. It was just so hot. We lost quite a few horses and baby colts in the fire. I always said it depended on the rain that might come, you know. And I said if the rains come at the right time in the fall to start this grass roots to grow just a little bit, and then have a wet spring, you'll see the grass come back and it'll get maybe a foot tall in 1 year. I think it'll all come back. It'll just take time. And if we don't get the rain in the fall or in the spring, we won't be able to run the cattle like we have. And I don't know whether we can live through it or not, but we're going to try.
We watched it take dead wood, what was left over it, and come into the canyon over there. And I brought Dad home and I said, I don't know what we're going to do. It just took everything. It took our state land, it took our private land, it took all the BLM we have, except for one little creek up here. Everything's gone. It's burned every fence, every water hole. It's the saddest day. Saddest day.
These are the two mares that lived. Her nose is all blistered and their manes are like plastic that you set on fire. These little hooves. That's what these are. Just burned the hooves right off of the babies. And that's pretty hard to find. They had a good life. They really did. When you go out to the desert, you usually would hear the birds and you'd see the sage-grouse and you'd see, it's so black and so hot and there's not one sound. Not one sound. So quiet. And you'd have a feeling that so much was lost, besides cattle and horses. I don't think anyone knows how this country will come back. You know, land regenerates itself. It's just, will it do it in time to save our ranch or our economy? We don't know.
We have quite a monumental task ahead of us. We have to do a field assessment for rehab needs on just over 500,000 acres of the Murphy complex. So we have almost every permanent staff member and temporary staff member in the Jarbidge Field Office out here taking a look around to decide what needs to be done to help repair the damage from the fire. We have fisheries, recreation, wildlife, botany, range, and then some basic vegetation ecology people, as well as members of our fire rehab monitoring crew who have been out here reading sites all summer long that burnt. This is by far the largest rehab assessment we've completed in the Jarbidge Field Office. It's a huge workload. It's 21 to 24,000 K quads to take a look at. So hopefully by splitting into groups and getting people on the ground, we can get a better feel for what really needs to be done. It's unfortunate some of the country that we burned, we don't have any recorded fire history on. So we don't know. We're assuming the last time it burned was sometime prior to 1950. It was probably the last best remaining country within the field office. Hopefully through our rehab actions we can make sure it comes back to that same type of country.
It's pretty easy to think about the cumulative impact of erosion from all these uplands, and they're going to end up in the drainage features. They can easily, that material can plug culverts, and we can.
A severe burn like we have here, this site, we're anticipating a lot of bare ground for a few years, and which really is an opportunity for those invasive species to get a foothold. And then of course we have one of our primary vectors right here adjacent to it, and it's the highway. which a lot of people bringing in a lot of outside weeds that aren't always already here, or just transporting them from within the area. We're going to be real anxious to get this site revegetated, and with the species that we're wanting on site, which will prevent you know, the opportunity for some of these weeds to expand and become established. Some of the things that we're doing other than revegetating is trying to control some of the travel and access to these burn areas. Now, travel restriction will be in place for 2 years, 2-3 years, and restricting travel to established routes, 2 tracks and established roads that are already here. Cross-country travel will be no longer allowed within the burn area to minimize the risk of weed spread into the areas.
The fire itself is going to leave its mark in that wilderness study area for years to come with the change in vegetation's absence of vegetation. Our major emphasis is going to be to restore and rehab as much as possible the vegetation that was destroyed, and with that is thousands of acres of planting. So in order for that seed to be viable in that seed bed, there will be cross-country motorized restrictions with the caveat that the existing roads and trails out there will remain open.
Sad part of it is
On the Murphy Complex, we drill seeded approximately 75,000 acres of a grass and forb mix. We also aerial seeded approximately 16,000 acres of a grass and forb mix. On top of that, we aerial seeded 280,000 acres of sagebrush seed.
I feel like on the overall scale of what we implemented that they've gone fairly well, that we have met those emergency stabilization and rehabilitation objectives that we'd set out in our plan, but also put the area on a trajectory to meet some long-term restoration and rehabilitation objectives. We had hundreds of points that we had collected data on the year prior to the Murphy Complex for later down the road. We had also utilized all that information from 2006 to update our vegetation map for the entire area. So we had a comprehensive, fairly fine-scale vegetation map that we were able to draw on and parcel out the treatments to match what the vegetation community was best suited for. So we were able to select our seed mixes, utilizing that information, and then make the best call for what would establish and work out there on the landscape.
We can do everything we want. We can put the seed in the ground, and without Mother Nature and the help that we get from the winter moisture, the spring rains, and you come back and it makes you look like you're a hero, but it's out of your hands. We do the same thing year after year after year, and without moisture in the right time for the seeds to grow, it's what it's all about. And I hear, boy, you guys did a great job. Well, we feel like we do a great job every year, but with the right moisture and the right time, and when seeds grow, our grasses, our forbs, our shrubs, it makes us all look good. And this was a case where I think every seed that we planted grew, and it's very rewarding.